I'm super excited to introduce you to Rebecca. So Rebecca is an occupational therapist, a Reiki master, award-winning author, and afterlife speaker. She received her Master's of Science degree from Boston University and has extensive experience in after-death communication, shamanism, Reiki, meditation, past life regression, automatic writing, crystal energy, and sound healing. Rebecca travels internationally teaching people after death communication techniques that facilitate healing and allow relationships to continue with our deceased loved ones. So now I'll hand it over to you, Becky.
Oh, Ashley, you are so fun. It is so exciting to do this with you. Thank you very, very, very much.
You.
And welcome, everybody. I am thrilled to present this 3 Secrets to Communicating with Your Deceased Loved Ones free webinar. It's just great. We have over 325 people registered, and I'm just delighted to share this information with you all. So please come join me as I share my 25-year journey exploring the afterlife with you, and we discover the 3 principles of afterlife communication. During this webinar, I look forward to assisting your mind to awaken so that you're able to receive messages from your loved ones living beyond. 25 years ago, I had no idea at all that the afterlife was real. An afterlife that is accessible to all of us living on Earth. I had no understanding that we could communicate with our loved ones when they passed. I would assume that every single person attending today has a loved one living beyond, and I express my sincere support and sympathy for you. Yet, what if you can communicate with your loved ones living beyond the veil? How would the prospect of maintaining a continuing connection with your deceased loved ones make you feel? I have asked this question to thousands of people, and 99% of the time, people say, I would love to continue connecting with my loved one that has passed beyond. It would make me feel wonderful. It would make me feel great. And when they learn how to believe in the afterlife and acknowledge that the signs and symbols that our loved ones share with us are real, they experience a joy and a reduction in grief that they have never felt before. A few people say, I don't want to have contact with my loved one who's died. I'd like to remember them just as they were on this earth. And that's totally fine. We are each on earth to have our own journey, to live our own lives, to share and receive whatever feels right to us. My vision for this session, and actually for my life, is this. I envision a world where communication with deceased loved ones is common, accepted as real, and regularly practiced by everyone interested in maintaining a connection with their loved ones living in the afterlife. I'm a science-based occupational therapist. I had no idea that there was even an afterlife until my brother David died at the age of 37. He passed in 1995, and he passed of AIDS. This was a time when thousands and thousands of people were dying every day, every week from AIDS. David had come out that he was gay in his early 20s. And 3 years before he passed, we were walking at Cape Cod, Coast Guard National Seashore, where we always take our family vacation. We were walking on the beach. And I casually said to Dave, hey, Dave, you've been tested for AIDS. He turned away. It was the longest 10 seconds of my life. I definitely did not expect that type of non-answer. He turned back and he said, I'm HIV positive. And I feel silly now saying this, but I didn't know what that meant. This was 1995. I said, well, David, what's that? And he said, it turns into AIDS. And I thought, oh my gosh, and the sun went behind the clouds and I started to get chilled, and this is my brother. 37, well, at that time he was about 34. And I said, how can I help? What can I do? Are you getting good medical care? And he said, yes, I am receiving the best medical care I possibly can. What can I do, David? What can I do? He said, please don't tell anybody. I don't want to be treated any differently. And I said, okay. And so what happened with me is that it left me without a support system. And I found myself in a bookstore, Barnes and Noble in Exton, Pennsylvania. It's right where I live. And I didn't know what New Age was. I didn't know what holistic was, but somehow I was in the New Age section of the Barnes and Noble store. And I was started to read and look at books on the afterlife. When I found an author that I thought sounded normal, not woo-woo-y, just normal, I would go and read everything that they wrote, starting at the very first book. One of the books that I read, or one of the series of books that I read, were Mary Summer Rain. And I sent some of these books by Mary Summer Rain to David so that when he passed, he knew, or both of us had a general idea that maybe there was an afterlife. You know, it's important for each of us to have a belief in the afterlife. It helps us. 6 weeks after he passed, I was riding my horse through a Christmas tree farm, filled with grief. I couldn't believe my 37-year-old brother had passed. Didn't make sense to me. I think everything in life is positive. I could find nothing positive about this experience. It was a beautiful day. I was riding through Chester Springs, Pennsylvania, in a Christmas tree farm, and I love the symbolism of that. And we had just had our first frost because David died on October 1st. This was middle of November. Icicles were sparkling from the trees and rainbows were around, and I opened up my heart just a little. It's a Boston accent. You can probably figure it out. I opened up my heart just a little and said, thank you. Thank you, universe, for a beautiful day. I closed my eyes, and there was my brother in human form, wearing a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. I had never, ever done anything like this. I wasn't psychic. I wasn't spiritual, but there he was, and I started to talk with him. And then I realized within a split second, I could send thought. And I was sent thought, how are you? And he was fine, and he wasn't in pain, and we shared thoughts. And I looked to my right, and there were my grandparents, Abe and Bessie Dole, who had passed about 10 years before. There was Edward, who was David's, one of his very best friends. He had passed about 6 months before. And there was my friend Holly, who had passed about 20 years before. And I thought, oh my gosh, the scene was luminescent. Love filled the air. It was absolutely spectacular. I turned back to look at David, and behind him was a golden colored arch. It wasn't McDonald's. All these books that I had read for the 3 years from trying to find support for the fact that my brother was going to die of AIDS had said, if you ever see a door, go into it as long as you feel okay. So I looked to David to see if he was going to take me through the door. And instead, my 4'10" grandmother skips with me through the door. And we end up in a fuchsia colored land. Now, my husband, Jeff, and I have 2 boys, 2 wonderful sons, and they are now 32 and 30, Kenny and Ryan. They say to me, Mom, do not say fuchsia. And I'm like, well, why not? And as you can imagine, they've heard this story a few times. They say, if you say fuchsia, it's going to sound like you're tripping, you're high, you're loaded. It just tell the story without saying fuchsia. It was fuchsia. It was this brilliant pink, bright pink color. In this brilliant pink color land, I heard my dad's dad. Now, the grandparents that I had seen before were my mom's side. This is my dad's side, and we call him Gramps. And I heard Gramps, and he said, get over here, in a very loving manner. And he had passed about 15 years ago. He takes me by the hand, and we fly, and I mean fly, through this fuchsia colored land, reminiscing, enjoying being with each other. It was fantastic. It seemed like hours. All of a sudden, my horse starts to move. And I say, Gramps, I need to go back. We did this U-turn in the middle of this fuchsia colored land. We come immediately to the golden colored arch. I fly through the arch and land in front of David. The horse is moving. David's there, Grandma and Grandpa, Edward, Holly, 24 other people that had passed. And I said, I need to go back. And you know what they all said at the exact same time? We will always be here. We will always be here. And I thought, oh my gosh. I pull up the reins, opened my eyes, and thought, what just happened to me? I thought about it for a long time and then went back to work. That night, I went to the library because this is 1995 and we really didn't have the internet at that point. And so I started to walk up and down the halls and the rows of the library. I don't know what I thought would happen. I actually think I thought a book would fall out and it would be the book. Well, that didn't happen. So I decided to go to a health food store and went to the bulletin board at a local health food store. And I looked at this bulletin board for a long time and nothing resonated. And I'm the type of person that makes things happen and rarely do I ask. I wanted to figure out how I can communicate with my brother again. And I asked, I said, to whoever, can you please send me a teacher? I want to learn how to communicate with my brother. And then I let it go. A couple of weeks later, a friend of mine, Dr. Amy Carroll, she's also an occupational therapist, and she and I were working together. I had been starting a private practice and she was on my staff, and she came in and she said, hey, Beck, how are you doing? Well, there was no way I was going to share what happened to me. And I said, and I was very filled with grief. I said, Amy, it's so hard. It's really been rough. And she said, I met somebody that I think you'd like. And I'm like, well, who is that? And she said, it's a shaman. And I said, well, what's a shaman? I mean, I had an idea, but I didn't really know. And Amy said, well, I'm not really sure. But I think a shaman believes that everything natural in life has energy. And she talks to people that have died. And I'm like, you're kidding. Where does she live? She said, Reading, Pennsylvania. Now, for those of you that live in Pennsylvania, Reading is an urban city, sort of blue collar. And I thought, my gosh, there's a shaman that lives in Reading. It was about an hour away from me. I thought if there were shamans, they lived in Brazil or Peru or something exotic like that. But no, Nancy Ariel lived in Reading, Pennsylvania, and she has been a shaman for years. Sorry to say she's not with us now. She has passed fairly recently. But I apprenticed with Nancy Ariel for 3 to 6 hours a week for a year, and it was fantastic. And of course, I learned how to communicate with my brother and hundreds of spiritual entities. I became a Reiki master, learned all sorts of things, and explored the afterlife for 20 years. I was concerned that somebody would think that I had lost my mind, so I kept this quiet. So many times we forget that we can ask. I encourage you to ask. When you want something, ask. And you say, who am I asking? You could either ask your loved ones that have lived beyond. I believe we all have guides. You can ask your guides. You can meet your guides. And it's really quite extraordinary. You will get an answer. I provide one-to-one coaching sessions. And recently, one of my clients, very important, well-respected woman, had an experience where she felt a spirit or a deceased loved one in the same room. It wasn't scary, she said, but she didn't know who it was. And she said, who was it, Becky? Do you have any ideas? And I did have some ideas, but I said, the next time this happens, ask. Ask, who are you? My client started to laugh. I'm pretty sure she was looking for something more profound than just ask. But she goes, oh, right, I just need to ask. So many times we forget that we just need to ask and then just let it go. So let me see where I am here. All right. Secret number 1. It's important to believe that the afterlife is real and accessible. In order to communicate with our deceased loved ones, first we need to believe. 6 years ago, I sold my large rehabilitation practice. And by that time, gosh, I had hundreds of therapists and thousands of clients. But I sold it. And I wanted to share this story. And I didn't think it would be a good idea for people to say, well, I work for someone that talks to dead people. Like, I just didn't think that was a good idea. And I was talking to my chief financial officer, Bob. And Bob and I had worked side by side for 20 years. And I said, Bob, my soul is crying out for me to sell this business. And I'd had it for 32 years. He said, Becky, do you mean you're interested in selling your business? And I'm like, well, I was thinking about it. Yes. And he said, I would be very glad to buy your business if you think I could do it. Now, of course he could do it. We had made every single decision side by side for 20 years, and I started to cry tears of joy. It was the best solution I could possibly have. And so all we did is just change roles, and he became president, I became CEO, and I started to really concentrate on this new journey that I had been continuing to have with the afterlife. I've been on a marvelous path ever since I decided to go public with the fact that we can communicate with our loved ones living beyond. And this knowing, this concept of being on the right path, this recognition that you can communicate with your deceased loved ones can happen to you if you believe the afterlife is real and accessible. 5 years ago this month in September, my book called Changemaker, How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life was published, and it was published by She Writes Press. Frankly, I was scared about the reaction. I thought I would be professionally ostracized because Changemaker shares the journey of what happened with me that first year after David passed, when I learned all sorts of amazing things. It has a section at the end of every chapter, and every chapter is a month. I mean, it is a year from when David passed, and it's called an illumination at the end of the chapter, where I give suggestions and recommendations and resources so that you can have a similar result as what happened in that chapter, if you like. I'm active within the American OT Association, and I wasn't sure how this would be received, but it really has been quite something. 6 months after Changemaker was published, my husband and I, Jeff and I, are visiting all the national parks in the United States, and we're almost done. We're in the whole rainforest, HOH. It's in the state of Washington. Did you know we have a rainforest in the United States? I had no idea, and it's a great rainforest. So we were in the rainforest in the upper west northern part of the state of Washington. And I was looking at my email, and it said, congratulations. Changemaker has won 3 National Book Awards, and can you please come to the Book Expo of America in New York City and pick them up? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Subsequently, Changemaker's won 2 more awards. And so the concept is, when you're on the right path, life provides. My husband took me to Seattle. It's about 4 hours away. And I flew home and picked up my illustrator, Mickey McAllister. And we went to New York City to the Book Expo of America and had our few moments of fame. And it's really been quite a blast. One of the reasons that I saw my brother David is that I was open to the possibility that the afterlife is real. These concepts felt right. It felt real. And my open mind allowed my brother, grandparents, and my friends to come forward. Now, not everyone visualizes loved ones. Some experience signs or symbols. You may hear their voices or smell their scent, but it's all the same. We can receive communication from our loved ones living beyond. My mom had chronic back pain for 13 years. The first time she felt it, she and Dad were in Nova Scotia. We camp all the time. And she and Dad were in Nova Scotia camping, and Mom's heart stopped. The pain was so severe, she had to be clapped back on her heart. And so for 13 years, she had this chronic pain. She had sciatic nerve pain, which she lost her joy for life. It was really very, very sad. When my dad passed, 6 months later, my mom passed. And I gently tried to reach out to her after she passed a couple of times, and she was very far away, and I decided not to bother her. What I believe was happening was she was being healed, because there are healing angels or healing spirits, or whatever you want to call them. There are healers in the afterlife that help us come back to ourselves. Mom had lost her zest for life and wanted to regain it. So anyway, about 6 months after she passed, my husband Jeff was doing a puzzle, and I was leaning over looking at it, and all of a sudden in my head I hear my mom's voice. the piece goes right there. And I'm like, oh, Mom, how are you? And she's very focused. She always has been. The piece goes right there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Mom. And so we tried the piece. It didn't exactly fit, but it almost did. And it's been such a blast because Mom comes back as a bird. And you think, now, Becky, how do you know that that's your mother? Well, you ask. And then you trust whatever you get in your head. The first message you get in the head, you trust. And so I used to ask, and now I can just energetically feel. But when animals or small birds or dragonflies or whatever come right up to you and look at you and stay for about 5 or 10 minutes, that's usually meaning that there's a deceased loved one that's trying to catch your attention. The animal that they use will have some significance between you and them. So you look at the animal and you think, my mom used to really love birds, and this bird is standing 3 feet away looking right at me. And you express love and gratitude, and it's totally awesome. Believe the experience. Enjoy the comfort that being with your deceased loved one brings to you. Believe in the afterlife. Believe that the afterlife is real and accessible. Secret number 2, trust your inner guidance. Now, what's that mean? Trust your inner guidance. We have a lot of rules, a lot of shoulds. We should do this and we should do that. Actually, what's most important is for us to follow our heart, to follow our heart, to trust our innermost feelings, to allow ourselves to believe what each one of us wants to believe. It's our journey. It's our own path. It's our life. Ever since I've been a young child, I've read fantasy books, and I love believing that there are different realms of existence, which actually is correct. Look what's happened. I've learned to talk with my deceased brother thousands of times in the past 25 years, and my communication continues to this day. When both my parents passed a few years ago, I received communication from each one of them. When my dad passed, it was quite profound. Dad was an Episcopalian minister, so he dealt with death all the time. Yet as a child, I don't remember ever talking to Dad about the afterlife. Dad and I only started talking about the afterlife when he realized that he too could communicate with David, and he was able to see his son at least 3 times before my dad passed. When I originally talked with David, I shared this experience with Dad and Mom, and Dad said, Becky, people deal with death in all sorts of ways. And that's what he said. And I appreciated that he didn't tell me I was nuts. And I'm like, okay, great. So when Dad passed, I was excited to talk with him, and I was able to connect with him immediately. And I do the connection through automatic writing. And so I type on my computer. It's sort of a curious situation, but anyway, that's what I do. And so I type on my computer and I said, hey, Dad, how is it where you are? And he said, well, the first thing he said was, people call you Rebecca around here. And I'm like, I do know that, Dad, but I just think Rebecca's sounding sort of formal, and I consider myself informal. So yes, I still keep using the name Becky, but I try to use the name Rebecca. And then he said, let's see, I just want to get this right. He said, Becky, there is no limitation to the amount of projects I can do, the amount of energy I can expend. I can do whatever I want. I can explore to my heart's content. And then he stopped, and I waited. And then I said, after a little while, so Dad, what are you going to do? And you know what he said? Becky, I am just going to be. I am just going to be. My dad passed when he was 86, and I have never heard him so content, so comfortable, so at ease with himself and the environment. I am just going to be. It's a wonderful statement for us all. Mindfulness has become a huge concept these days, being present in the moment, not thinking about the past nor the future, just being present now. If I can communicate with my deceased loved ones, so can you. There is nothing different about me that allows this to happen, except that I do believe the afterlife is real and I trust my inner guidance. Secret number 2. Tons of people contact me and they share signs and symbols and they say, are these real? And I listen very carefully, or I read their email quite well. And most of the time, almost all the time, I say, yes, that's a sign from your loved one. Trust your heart, trust your inner guidance. So then we wonder, how can this be real? We're all composed of energy. Energy is within us and energy is around us. Think about an EKG, an electrocardiogram. If you ever have to go have an EKG, what it does is measure the beat of your heart. So what's that? That's energy. If you have an MRI, say you did something to your arm, and you have an MRI, a magnetic resonance image, it takes a picture of your healthy and diseased tissue or muscles or nerves. It's energy that it's focusing on. Or an EEG, an electroencephalogram. That measures our brain waves. It's measuring the energy in our brain. Our bodies are composed of energy. Sound is energy. Nature is energy. Our consciousness is energy. Everything real and natural has energy. When we pass, our consciousness remains and just our bodies die. Our consciousness moves into a higher realm of existence, a higher vibrational realm, which we can access. 85% of after-death communication occurs in dreams. I believe our consciousness leaves our body, our physical body, and travels up to another level, travels up to the afterlife, another realm of existence. Do you ever have a dream that felt real, that felt right, a dream that had your deceased loved one in it? It's real. You have received communication from your loved one living in the afterlife. Did you ever go into your car and turn on the radio and hear the favorite song of your deceased loved one as soon as you enter the car? That's it. Why did it play at exactly the same time you entered? It's your loved one sending you a sign. Have you ever watched TV and the favorite show of your deceased loved one comes on and somehow it either clicks on and off, or it's the first thing that happens, or whatever? Our loved ones in the afterlife use signs and symbols that remind us of them. And they say, I'm here, I'm alive, I love you. Believe that these messages are real. Trust your inner guidance. Trust your heart. Even if you think you're nuts, you're not nuts. You're part of 9 to 15 million people that have had experiences beyond our earthly existence. Yet we don't talk about this because we think people will think we have lost our mind. Trust your inner guidance. Lots of people say they haven't received a sign. Yet when I talk with them, they say, well, I did have a dream, or, well, I had this sign. It's it. Just believe it. On Earth, we live in a fast-paced environment. Time is very important to us. Yet, and this is important, if we do live forever, which I firmly believe, there is no time. Now think about that for a moment. There's no time? I mean, we live with time here on Earth. What does that mean for you? If you had no time, no limitations, would you do anything different? Would you allow yourself to listen to your heart? Can you imagine doing something different than you are doing now? What can you do to make your heart sing, to trust your inner guidance? Time is just an earthly concept. So our loved ones living in the afterlife are not as aware of time as we are here on Earth. It took me years to understand that concept. When I had my rehabilitation private practice, I lived in 5-minute increments. Imagine if there is no time. What would that mean to you? Secret number 2, trust your inner guidance. If it feels right, believe it, acknowledge it, make your heart sing. I love teaching people that the afterlife is real. Yes, you will have doubts. And yes, you will wonder if it's real. I've been there. I understand. I'm happy to assist you to have communication with your deceased loved ones. For a few moments, let me share with you about an upcoming course that I'm presenting in a few weeks called After Death Communication. Discover unique skills to continue your connection with your deceased loved ones. After I present a quick overview of the course, we're going to go back to the most powerful secret number 3. I've taught thousands of people after-death communication skills with excellent results. Last year, when I taught this course online, 100% of those in a post-course survey said they believe they could receive and share communication with their loved ones. 100%. I'm like, all right. I would love to teach you how to receive and send communication with your loved ones living beyond the veil. It's so healing to have a continuing relationship. Your grief recedes and you can move forward knowing that your loved ones are alive and just living in a different reality. Let me share my proven 7-step process. Each week's session will include 60 minutes of presentation, like I'm doing right now. 60 minutes of presentation followed by 30 minutes of interaction, questions and answers. I'll answer any question you have. I had no psychic or spiritual experience when this happened. If I can do this, so can you. If you already have some blossoming after-death communication skills, this course enhances it. Each weekly session is recorded, so you never have to worry about missing a session. So let me go through these quickly. Session number 1, communicating with those living beyond. I'll assist you with techniques to relax your mind so that you can receive these messages. When our mind is filled with day-to-day details of life, it's hard to receive messages from our deceased loved ones. Let me help you learn different techniques so that you can relax your mind to receive communication. Session number 2, take time for you. Release your grief to allow after-death contact. It's important to grieve for your husband, your spouse, your pet, your brother, your sister, your child. It's important to allow ourselves to grieve and then move forward. Feelings of loneliness, grief, sadness, and even despair are common. This session teaches you ways to release feelings of grief while continuing to honor your loved one. You discover how to create a sacred place of memory for those that have passed. You'll learn that the eternity of all life is validated by millions of people that have had near-death experiences, spiritually transformative experiences, which is what I had, or even shared death experiences. Discover that these experiences are real and they support the concept that we don't die. We have weekly guided meditations that are specific to each course that we practice. You're able to download them so that you can practice anytime you want. Session number 3, this is one of my most favorite sessions. It's about nature. I love nature. Nature is very healing, and we talk about forest bathing. Forest bathing has begun in Japan, and there's statistically significant results that show that 2 hours spent in a forest is healing and reduces our stress and anxiety. We talk about spending time in nature and also talk about walking labyrinths, which is another way to help relieve our grief. Session 4 is great fun. This session's a blast. We talk and show and demonstrate and share common signs and symbols that we've received, that all of us have received, communicating with our loved ones. And if you haven't received them, you'll listen to others, and it helps validate that this is real. We also use divination cards, and we talk about how you can ask a question. You have your own divination cards that you can get, and you can receive an answer from your loved ones living beyond. I was very lucky to see my brother David, but most of the time I don't see him. I hear him, but I don't see him. And we learn how to recognize the signs and symbols that show us numbers. For example, this is session 4. Spirituality, the number 4 means family, a close-knit group of people that have decided to spend their earthly existence together. You learn to recognize numbers that are important to you and remind you of your deceased loved one. For example, my brother died on October 1st, 10/1. A few years ago, I was driving to a holistic expo where I was a major speaker talking about after-death communication. I looked at my car odometer. I got in the car, looked at the odometer, and every single number was a 1 and a 0. And I said, David, thank you. Thank you so very much. It made my heart sing. Signs from our loved ones are available for you to receive. You learn how to find them, discriminate whether they're real, and release the ones that aren't real. But regardless, it makes us feel good. You learn how to identify your loved one's unique energy stamp. Okay, this is the big session, session 5. Session 5 is where you pull everything that you've learned into practice. Your mind is relaxed and open to receive. You've experienced how a weekly guided meditation enhances your ability to receive and share messages, session number 1. You've discovered the ability to take time for you and release your grief, session 2. Nature has bestowed her healing bounties on you, session 3. You've discovered how to explore signs and symbols, session 4. Number 5 is when we have a specific guided meditation so that you communicate with your deceased loved ones. And there's plenty of time for sharing and questions and answers. Now that you've discovered how to receive and share communication with your loved ones, there's ways to enhance the process. And that's what we talk about in session number 6. Crystals, such as clear quartz crystals, power computers, the TV, radios. Clear quartz crystals do that. So it makes sense that we can use the energy from these clear quartz crystals to facilitate afterlife communication. Rose quartz, you see a rose quartz heart on your screen. That symbolizes love. I always have rose quartz in my pocket, and right now I have 3. I love sharing love, and these crystals facilitate that energy. Reiki is a natural healing modality that uses our own energy in order to enhance our healing, our feelings of self-worth, and it also expands communication with the afterlife. Let me tell you a little story. So I've been teaching Reiki every year for the in-person American Occupational Therapy Association annual conference since 2015. In 2017, Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, called me up and they said, hey, Beck, a number of our OT faculty have gone to your Reiki classes and we would like you to come and teach the graduating OT occupational therapy Reiki, occupational therapy students Reiki. Would that be okay? I said, oh my gosh, that'd be great. And then they said, why don't we partner with the Pittsburgh chapter of the Occupational Therapy Association in Pennsylvania. So within one weekend, 70 people received Reiki level 1 training, because you can learn Reiki in one day. Now, when I first walked into the Duquesne OT student class, there were about 40 students in the class. And I said, hi, I'm Becky Austill-Clausen, and how many of you are familiar with Reiki? And not one person raised their hand. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is going to be quite something. That weekend, 70 people received Reiki training, and 20% had after-death communication experiences. Most people had never, ever communicated with their loved ones. 20%, 15 people had after-death communication experiences. Now, that's a high number. Usually when I teach Reiki, there's a couple, but this was 15 people. And I'm like, okay, Reiki does enhance after-death communication. And so since then, I've been speaking all across the country, even including Lilydale, which is the premier, largest site of psychics and mediums, and teaching after-death communication. It's really quite something. Reiki actually does facilitate that. You also discover how additional biofield energy modalities such as yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, and healing touch expand our energetic vibrations, which increase our ability to receive and send after-death communication messages. Our final 7th session integrates everything. It puts it all together so that you can continue to have contact with your deceased loved ones as part of your daily existence. You discover that we are all part of universal connectedness. When our physical body dies, our soul, our spirit, our unique individuality, our consciousness remains. You discover additional techniques that finalize your understanding that the afterlife is real, and you're able to integrate and enjoy the connections with your loved ones forever. For this final session, it's an extended session because we first have the session 7 and then we review everything. And it is a wonderful culmination where you have transformed your ability and learned how to communicate with your deceased loved ones. I'm almost finished, and then we're going to go back to the 3rd and my most favorite secret to communicating with our loved ones. 7 live sessions with questions and answer, 7 guided video meditations that you can download at any time, weekly recordings, private Facebook community. There's a boutique of books and products. Every course, I have multiple recommended books and products that you may be interested in using to help expand your skills. I teach Reiki immersion often throughout the year, and in the spring it's happening, and you can have discount rates. If you go to After-Death Communication, I'm glad to give you a discount rate to attend Reiki. And there's, like I said, an extended class wrap-up. Also, we have a special bonus where there's a wonderful fellow, Nicholas Pearson, who is a crystal expert, does a special session just for us on which crystals enhance after-death communication. So this class starts Tuesday, October 19th. So it's just in a couple of weeks. It starts at 2 o'clock. It's an hour and a half, 2 to 3:30. Again, 60 minutes of presentation. Everything's recorded, 30 minutes, questions and answers. Registration just opened up. You're welcome to sign up now if you like. RebeccaAustill-Clausen.com/after-death. Relieve your grief, establish connections with your deceased loved ones, and bring joy and love back to your life. Secret number 3, love surpasses all boundaries. Love is the strongest emotion of all. Love energy passes through our earthly existence and travels to the afterlife in less than a second, in less than the speed of light. Love is so powerful that it is felt instantaneously by our loved ones living beyond. How do I know that? Let me share a totally cool story with you. So I've said that I teach Reiki, and a few years ago I was teaching Reiki Level 1, immediately followed by Reiki Level 2 at the American OT Conference. This was day 2, and an occupational therapist was sitting in the front row. We had just finished learning how to send long-distance healing. And Reiki is often called unconditional love. So Reiki sends unconditional love, not only to ourselves, but to others. Every time we share Reiki, we always ask permission from the person we'd like to send it to, always. And this occupational therapist sitting in the front row had previously asked her daughter, I'm going to be going to Reiki, and sometime in 2 days, I'm going to be asked to send love. Would it be all right if I sent it to you? And the daughter said yes. A few seconds after, and I'm talking a few seconds after the occupational therapist sent love to her daughter hundreds of miles away, the OT's phone pinged, and it was her daughter who said, Mom, all of a sudden, I feel a tremendous sense of peace, joy, and love. Did you just send me Reiki? And the mom said, yes, I did. I just sent you Reiki just moments ago. I've told this story a lot, and it was so fun. to meet this lady again. And I met her daughter. She was taking a Reiki masterclass from me. And it was just a blast to say, I talk about you all the time. And it's just a joyful experience to be able to receive and send love. Love can be felt immediately. When you send love to your deceased loved ones, they will get it. Send it with the intention, with the belief that it will be received. Share your love with your deceased loved one and then be alert to signs and symbols, particularly the next couple of days, that remind you of your deceased loved one, because that's them saying, hey, thanks. I got your love. I'm sending it back. Love surpasses all boundaries. Let me tell you another story. A friend of mine, Sherry, wonderful, wonderful occupational therapist, has a brother that passed from suicide. Sherry was driving past a church sign a few days after he passed and saw a notice on the church that said, quote, I got you a giraffe. Now that is a curious statement to have on the outside of a church. I got you a giraffe. My friend Sherry collects giraffes, and she thought, now, why am I seeing this I got you a giraffe sign on a church? Sherry's brother always gave her giraffes. She wondered, could this be a sign from my brother? Sherry trusted her inner guidance, which is secret number 2. She believed this was a message from her recently departed brother, which is secret number 1. She immediately drove to her brother's home, lifted up the garage door, and there were 21 stuffed animal giraffes waiting for her. Her brother loved her so much that he left her 21 giraffes to be found after he passed. And then he figured out a way to tell her, I got you a giraffe. When I teach people after death communication, I always encourage people to keep a journal, to type into your computer, or somehow to keep a record of the events that happen. Put a date and the year so that when you start to doubt yourself, you can go back and say, oh my gosh, that really did happen. And yes, that happened too. And it reminds us that we can receive communication from our loved ones. It's also helpful to keep a log about the messages from your pets that pass, because this works extremely well with pets as well. Our pets can communicate with us as well. We often forget the synchronicities that occur as we wonder, is this really a sign? Keeping a log helps us remember. Since there is no time, even if a person passed years before, share your love. Share it with intention and a calm heart, with no expectations, just share it. Take a deep breath. I often say, encourage people to close your eyes if you like. Take a deep breath and breathe in love and peace and release any type of stress or strain you may have. Breathe in harmony and let go of any type of anxiousness. Breathe in joy, joy for your loved one living beyond, and let yourself feel and share love. Send love to your loved one. Think deeply with intention. Imagine the love being sent from your heart to your deceased loved one, traveling on a rainbow of light energy. Or imagine your love traveling on a beautiful pulsing white light, starting from your heart, going to their heart. Then if you want, say, can you please send me a sign? Now, some people say, I want a specific sign. Personally, I think that's a little bit harder. When we're asking for a specific sign, don't mean you can't get it, but for us just starting, it's harder to receive a specific sign. But keep yourself open to receiving a sign or a symbol that reminds you of your loved one. And then when it happens, or when you think something may remind you of your loved one, ask, trust your inner self, and say thank you. Your love will be received, just like the love that the mom sent long distance to her daughter during a Reiki class and received a text message instantly after she had sent Reiki. Let me share one more story. I'm almost done, and then we're going to have questions and answers. A friend of mine's son passed. It was very, very, very sad from a drug overdose. He was only 18 years old. The whole family, in fact, the entire community was grieving. About 3 months after this fellow passed, the mom was in his room and she lifted up his clothes and she was smelling his clothes. And she said, "Son, if you were around, would you please send me a sign?" Immediately, the house alarm went off. Woo, 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 woo. The, the whole house was clanging with this alarm. And the mom asked for a sign and she received an immediate sign. She ran down the stairs and said, "This is our son. This is our son." The mom's sister was there and she had explored the afterlife, and the mom explained what had happened. And the sister said, "Yes, this is your son." The mother's mother was also there. And she said, "There is no way that that's your son. It's just the alarm going off." Some people are not going to believe, and that's to be expected. But for you, believe the afterlife is real and accessible. Secret number one: trust your inner guidance. Your heart knows what's right for you. Secret number two: love surpasses all boundaries. Share your love. It will be received. And that's secret number three, to facilitate communication with your loved ones that have passed beyond. I hope you found the 3 secrets to communicating with your deceased loved ones enjoyable, thought-provoking, and believable. Everything I have shared is true. Everything I have presented is possible for you. If you believe the afterlife is real, you trust your inner guidance, and you recognize that love is the strongest emotion of all. If you'd like to learn more and really get this set, come join me October 19th, Tuesday, 2:00 Eastern Time. Come join me. Join a group of like-minded souls and share your belief and learn the techniques that the afterlife is real. The registration's on the slide right now. And Ashley, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be great. And so at this point, let me stop sharing my screen and I'm open for questions and answers.
Wow, thank you so much, Becky. That was wonderful. We've got some questions, so I'm going to just dive right in if that's okay.
Great.
Okay. Sonia asked, "Dear Rebecca, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Some time ago, I dreamed that my 1-year-old nephew is actually my deceased grandfather. How can I know that this was not just a dream? And can I still communicate with my deceased grandfather in the form I knew him, even when he has reincarnated?"
Oh, isn't that an interesting question?
Yeah.
I mean, that is really quite something. In my opinion, the answer is yes. You can still communicate with your grandfather. You can communicate with your grandfather through your nephew, or you can communicate directly with your grandfather. And you do that through meditation. It's really quite something. You think, well, how can I communicate with my grandfather through my nephew? But when you're with your nephew, honor him, honor all he is, because we can come back as multiple souls. We come back as in multiple years, multiple times, multiple lifetimes. So you can communicate with your grandfather through your nephew or directly. It's really quite something. That was an excellent question. That was great. Wow, to start this off with that question, way to go.
Great. So Angela asks, "Can we really learn how to communicate with our deceased loved ones, even if we have absolutely no psychic or spiritual skills?" Another great question.
Well, I had none. And if I can do it, you can do it. And, last year was the first time that I did this 7-week class, the same one that I'm talking about and doing starting October 19th. It was so validating to do a 3-week post-course survey and receive 100% of everybody that responded. They said, yes, you can learn it. And there were tons of people in that class that had no psychic or spiritual experience. But because you're a part of a group, it serves as a validation. And there's a lot of support that happens. Plus, you have weekly guided meditations. And you think, well, I've never meditated before. Well, I hadn't either. I didn't even know I was meditating, and all I was doing was just taking some deep breaths and relaxing our mind. And that's what it takes. It takes our mind to be able to relax in order to intentionally send love and keep our mind open. So yes, you can do this.
Okay, Michelle asks, I noticed that some psychic mediums are open to sessions which may connect with a deceased loved one anytime, and some like to wait for a full year after their transition to spirit. What are your thoughts about that?
You know, I'm reading a book right now by a psychic medium. It's called The Practicing Psychic, and it's by William Stillman. And he and I do a fair amount of presentations together. And he believes, and he likes to wait a year. I don't like to wait a year. I like to be able to do it immediately if you feel ready and if you are able to receive a response. But a lot of times, one of the reasons that people wait a year is because you do need to grieve. And so if you immediately try to contact someone because you're having all this earthly grief, which is normal, it may impair the ability for you to connect with your loved ones living beyond. So it's good to wait. Like traditionally, people wait at least 6 months. But like with my dad, I knew Dad communicated with my brother. I knew he believed in it at the very end. He did believe, and I believed. And so I was able to get him immediately. Most people wait usually about 3 to 6 months. Their grief recedes. We talk about how that happens, but you don't have to. But you want to honor yourself. You want to honor your own gifts. You want to be able to be comfortable with who you are and then start the relationship. These are excellent questions. Way to go.
Yes, we've got a lot of questions coming in, so keep putting them in the Q&A box. Becky, do you think a soul can be stuck here on this plane? One medium told me my son didn't know he died and did not understand why I wasn't responding to him.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I absolutely do believe people can be stuck here, and I've helped a number of souls pass. Sometimes people don't know that they've died, and there are specific techniques to help a soul if they're ready and if they want to pass, and it's a very loving experience. So yes, people can get stuck. It doesn't happen hardly ever. Like people usually pass, and then if you don't hear from them right off the bat, they could be getting healed, but you will hear from them. Rarely, if ever, have I talked to people that have not heard from their loved ones. And most of the time you hear from them within that first year, which is sort of why I don't really like to wait a year, because a lot of times you do hear from them. Yes, people can get stuck, but they also can move on.
Great. I've got another great question. Most of my life, I grew up perceiving the world materialistically. Then I lost my teenage son, and now I want to believe in the afterlife so bad, but my brain just keeps doubting. Do you have any suggestions on how to achieve your number one secret? I want it more than anything.
It's an excellent question. I did a presentation last night to the International Association of Near-Death Studies Boston group. And there was a fellow there that was similar. He said, I want this, but my mind keeps saying I can't get it. We need to be able to relax our mind. After-death communication uses our heart. We're a mind-based society in the United States, but all these techniques have been used for thousands of years by people that aren't in the United States. But we're so biomechanical here in the United States that we use our mind instead of our heart. So by participating in a comfortable, peaceful, accepting, loving group of like-minded souls that are all looking for the same thing, teach me, how can I believe in the afterlife? I think that's probably the most positive, the most beneficial way to learn it. I mean, I do one-to-one coaching and I can talk to you one-to-one, but gosh, to be able to be with other people that are in the same place you are and share and receive communication with them on the earth and practice doing it in the afterlife together, it does seem to help a lot. Good question. You're doing great, Ashley.
Awesome. There's some great, great questions for this webinar. Okay, so does everyone who passes on communication with their wait, sorry, I don't quite know what that question meant. I'm going to go into the next one. What is the difference between your after death course and the afterlife communication, please?
Yep. So I have a free course and it's called Afterlife Communication. It's printed and it's written, and you can get it from my website, which is Austill-Clausen.com. And I think it's like that first column, it'll say free Afterlife Communication. If you want the live experience, that's what the after death communication course is. And so you get the live experience, or you can have the written experience. My goal is to help people learn how to communicate with your loved one in whatever fashion you want. It does seem helpful to have a group that you can count on, and we've got a private Facebook group, and we've got tremendous resources and all that. It does seem to help, but that's the difference. The afterlife on my website is free printed. It's about 2 or 3 pages of information per session. The after death communication course that we're talking about is live, and you get the guided meditations, and you can download them, and it's recorded and all that jazz. Good question.
Okay. Does Rebecca also get communication from her Earth soul family that validates not only this life, but perhaps past lives?
Yes, there's a whole specialty called past life regression. And I don't necessarily talk about that a lot in the after death communication course, but there are specific techniques to facilitate us learning about our past life. I had a past life in Egypt, and it's been pretty interesting. I've been to Egypt twice in this lifetime, and I'm like, wow, that is something. And there's such a feeling for me, a feeling of coming home. It's really quite interesting. So there is a lot to be learned with past life regression, and how it can help facilitate our awareness of our soul's purpose. Because, we come to this earth with a purpose. If we believe that there's no time and that we live eternally, why is it that we're here on earth at this specific time? There's some purpose that we're trying to understand that usually we forget. We forget when we're a kid. Usually we forget by the age of 5 or 6. Learning after death communication, learning Reiki if you want, allowing yourself to meditate, allowing yourself to live with your heart facilitates an awareness of our soul's purpose, which helps us feel good and connect with our loved one living beyond.
Great, thank you. Debbie asks, how does one know if dreams of deceased loved ones are real or merely processing of life's events?
Oh, I've been teaching this class a long time, and these are excellent questions. If the dream feels real, if you feel good, if you feel, wow, that was really quite something, and if you remember it, because a lot of times, most of the time, we forget the dreams, but these dreams that are really communication from our loved ones, we remember. They're special dreams. And so regardless of whether and this is sort of a pat answer, but regardless of whether you believe it or not, try to make yourself believe it, because it helps us feel better. And then if your loved ones know that you want to receive communication, it will increase, because we all have free will on this earth. And if people are not, if our loved ones living beyond tried to reach us a couple of times and it didn't really work and we didn't respond, they may not continue unless they have an active calling from you that you would like to receive communication. And then keep your mind open and your heart open so that you can receive their messages and believe it.
All right. Gianna asks, how do I ask for communication with my son without trying too hard? When I'm able, do you think he'd talk to me about his overdose?
Yes. Now, it's interesting when we say talk. usually the messages that we receive from our loved ones living beyond are not a physical conversation, are not like you ask a question, you get an answer. That's a long-winded answer. When people are living in the afterlife, everything happens instantaneously. And so like when I first saw my brother 25 years ago, and I started talking with him, and then a second later, this is in the Christmas tree farm, a second later I said I could just share thought. Everything was shared within a second, everything. And so when you say talk, really most of the time what happens is that you receive a knowing, you receive a message, you receive an awareness, you receive an understanding. You know what happened? And you'll receive that awareness and that calmness and that sense of peace will become apparent in your heart.
Okay. Daryl asks, it's an interesting question. Where do you get the 85% figure when it talks about the dreams? Because he's saying he doesn't dream very much. So he just kind of wanted to understand where that number came from.
Sure. Windbridge Research Institute, Monroe Institute, after-death, near-death experiences. A lot of these people have explored how we receive after-death communication, and dreams have become the number one way in thousands of people's answers to surveys about how they receive communication. And so that's where it comes. Now, if you don't dream, it's okay. It doesn't mean that 8 out of 10 times you're not going to get it. Like, it doesn't mean that. It just means dreams aren't going to be your avenue. Each one of us have certain, they're called clears, certain clears that are stronger for us, whether we receive information by our eyes, whether we see it, whether we smell it, whether we feel it, what works best for you. And so you can discover what is your best way to receive information. There's no right way or wrong way. You can receive this information. And so if you don't have dreams, it's okay. You know what you can do though, is tonight, when you go to bed, calm yourself. Really calm yourself. Ideally, close your eyes. I always say I encourage people to close your eyes, but if you don't want to, do whatever makes it right for you. But we're so visual in our society that I think when we close our eyes, it allows us to come inward. So tonight, when you go to bed, I encourage you to close your eyes and take some nice deep breaths in and out and just relax your mind, and then ask for your loved one to appear in a dream. Ask. And maybe it'll happen and maybe it won't. And maybe you'll remember and maybe you won't. You might want to keep a little notepad beside your bed so that you can write it down as soon as you wake up, because we forget dreams most of the time. But ask, and try not to be discouraged if it doesn't happen. Share your love.
Thank you. Okay. Does grief block communication? Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, it happened with me. 6 weeks, I had absolutely zero communication after my brother passed. It's funny. I was at this IANS, International Association of Near-Death Studies study group last night with, maybe you all know, Dr. Bernie Siegel. He's one of the most renowned holistic integrative physicians, and he happened to be there. And he's like, Becky, you need to talk about people dying. People actually die. So when people die, they actually can. I'm sorry, what was the question? I got distracted with the Bernie Siegel thing. Sorry, my fault.
Oh, it's okay. I already passed it along. I don't.
Oh gosh, there was some, I'm sorry.
No,
my
it's
fault.
Okay.
It was when people die, how do we know? Oh, do we get blocked?
Oh yeah, just grief.
Oh yes.
Block communication. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, grief does block it, because our heart, it's a heartfelt communication that we do with the afterlife. If our heart is blocked, it doesn't allow anything else to be there. So we do need to do activities, techniques, release that grief in a safe environment, in a loving manner. How can we release that grief so that we can allow communication to occur? Good job, Ashley. Thanks.
There's a lot here. Okay, so we've got a couple more. Peggy asks, I take depression and anxiety meds since my son's passing. Do you believe these meds affect my abilities to raise to a higher energy for dreams and communication with my deceased relatives? I've heard mixed messages on this, but I do need my meds too.
That is an excellent question. The reason people take meds is so that we can function. You must be able to function in order to live on this earth. If there's a way that you can also, while you're taking these meds, believe that you can receive communication, it will help. You need to believe it. You need to practice it, share it. Meds don't necessarily block it. It allows you to function healthy and well. Now, what's happened recently is that there's a practice, a medical practice called integrative medicine. Integrative medicine has really come into the forefront these days. And what it does is it combines traditional, what's called allopathic medicine, with complementary modalities. It integrates it. And so the medications could be considered more traditional. You may find yourself wanting to explore some of these complementary modalities, such as yoga, Reiki, Tai Chi, Qigong, after-death communication, meditation, guided shamanic journeying. There's all sorts of complementary practices, natural foods, organic things. All of this help integrate our bodies. Doesn't mean we have to totally go with the traditional medical model. We can add and integrate complementary. So you can add additional modalities and processes to your traditional medication routine, and it's fine. There was a survey done in 2017 by the American Hospital Association, and they surveyed all the hospitals across the United States, and 42% of the hospitals have complementary modalities. The trick on it is to ask. You need to ask, because a lot of people are still wondering whether these things are real and how does it help. But it's the reason complementary modalities are in hospitals now are because patients have asked. It's a humongous industry, patient provided, patient paid. Patients find that they help. So you absolutely can do this with the current meds that you're on, but I would encourage you to also add some accessory modalities to assist you, or trainings. Good question.
Okay, Jen asked, if a loved one passes on and never really believed in this type of communication with loved ones, will she be able to connect with them if they never believed in it here?
Yes, you do not need to believe or have your person that is passed believe that they can communicate so many times. I mean, I talk with hundreds, thousands of people that have passed on, and most of them had no idea that they could do this, because it's really just become normal, for lack of a better word, or more accepted or more common in really the last 5 years. And so there's thousands, millions of people that have passed that don't know that this is possible. Once you pass, though, you're surrounded by love, you're surrounded by teachers, you're surrounded by support systems that facilitate you being able to communicate with the loved ones back here on earth if you want.
Okay, Chris asks, when does the after-death communication course begin and how long is it?
Good question. Tuesday, and so it's the same day as today, Tuesday, 2 to 3:30 Eastern time, and then you can figure out, I think it's 11 o'clock Pacific and 12 o'clock Mountain, and for the United Kingdom, I think it's 2, gosh, you guys know better than I do. But anyway, It's an hour and a half, 60 minutes, which is essentially what happened today. I did a 60-minute presentation, 30 minutes questions and answers. I am always available by email, always. And so even if you don't sign up for the course, just send me an email, Becky@RebeccaAustill-Clausen.com, or check my website. I've got the contact form there. And so that it goes through November 30th. It's 7 weeks, all right in a row. And then we have a special guest session with this fantastic fellow, Nicholas Pearson, who talks all about crystals. It's unbelievably excellent. And he's scientific, but he has a magnificent heart. And he developed this program just for us on crystals that facilitate after-death communication. That happens to be on a Monday, right before the 6th class. And so he's talking on Monday, let's see, I think it's the 22nd, November 22nd. So that's what it is. It's October 19th to November 30th, and all sessions are recorded. So if for some reason you can't make them or you can't make all of them, you'll get a recording rapidly.
Great. Yeah, the class with Nicholas was amazing. It's really, really, really cool. Okay. Therese asked, when are you opening registration and how much is the course?
Good question. Registration open today. It's right now. And I think, Ashley, you probably put it in the chat or, okay, great. So it's just,
I'll put it in again.
Okay, great. It's just my name, Rebecca. I'm sorry, my name's so long. Rebecca Austill-Clausen.com. No hyphen, no space. RebeccaAustill-Clausen.com / after-death. And I just see it, Ashley just put it in, so it's right in there. But you just go into it and you can see the whole, lots of testimonials and lots of explanations about the class. It costs $297. So it's $297 for 7 weeks of amazing transformational energy and fun.
Yes. Okay. We're good for 1 or 2 more questions?
Sure.
Okay. Patty asked, is there anything I need to be nervous about when I communicate with my loved ones living beyond the veil?
Yeah, that's a good, thank you. That's a good question. The answer is no, but I always encourage everyone when we're communicating with our loved ones to surround yourself with white light of love. Intend for everything to be beautiful. Intend for you to have an excellent connection. The white light of love is the love of universal consciousness. You can also, if you want, I talk about shielding. Sometimes we feel that we need to protect ourselves. I don't even like to use that word because if you use the word protection, it means you need to be protected. But sometimes, once in a while, something feels a little weird. And so we talk about how to shield yourself. And the way I recommend most of the time, but you can do it any way you want, is imagine a clear egg-shaped glass surrounding you. And I keep going like this because it's all around you. It's above your head, usually about 6 to 10 inches above your head on each side of you, underneath your feet. You're in the middle and you're protected. Usually you set it 6 to 10 inches from your body. There's nothing that can come past that shield, nothing. It's also tricky for you to send things out, but the idea is to let you know that you're okay, you're safe, and you're comfortable. And you can practice that. You practice setting it up really quickly. And then when you feel like in 20 minutes or whatever, let it go, because you don't need to shield yourself. Rarely is there anything that is weird. Like it's love. That's what happens when we communicate with the afterlife. It's love. Love is the universal consciousness. So why would we want to be worried about that? If you think that something bad's going to happen, I often say to people, well, do you like watch horror movies? And they'll say, yes. And I say, well, you might not want to watch horror movies. Like, it's not helpful to put yourself in a horror situation. I never watch horror movies. I don't want to go there. I like to concentrate on love. And so be aware of what you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with love, you receive love. The more love you give, the more love you get. It's astounding concept.
Okay, I'm going to do 2 more questions. Tracy asked, what is the price for the course?
Oh yeah, $297.
Yep. And then Lisa asked, this is a really good question too. She has a meeting every Tuesday at the same time as the upcoming course. I see that the sessions will be recorded. However, I'm a bit hesitant because I will not be able to participate in the live Q&A. Please let me know your thoughts about this.
Sure. We have a private Facebook group.
Yeah.
Rebecca's After Death Communication group, and only people that take the class can participate in that group. And so you're welcome to engage with people. It's an engaging group, and you can make it as engaging as you want. So you have to be allowed to join that group, so you can engage that way. You also can you can talk to me, like send me an email, communicate with me. I'll assist you however I can. The recordings are good. I mean, they're recording, and so you get the whole thing. Plus, a lot of what happens in this class can be done not during the live portion. I've got a whole boutique of books and products that is all an annotated list of these wonderful books that you can read, that are resources, products to help you. Of course, I have a rose quartz crystal as one of them. And, you know, it cheers love. So you have that, and you have the guided meditations. There's 7, they're about 10 minutes long guided meditations that facilitate your ability to communicate not during the class, to learn how to relax your mind and learn how to send love, receive love, and send love to your loved ones living beyond. And you can download all of these, and they're all available. So the love part is, I mean, the live part is great. Of course, it's great, but you don't have to do that.
Okay, one more.
Okay.
100% of attendees believe they can receive and send contact with their deceased loved ones. You mentioned that. Does this mean they actually were able to communicate after the course, or just that they believe it's a possibility?
Yeah, I have read that, the way I worded that question, a lot. I'm like, okay, do they just believe it, or did they actually experience it? To my knowledge, every single person that attended this class was able to receive and send communication with their deceased loved ones. That's my awareness. That's what I believe. You know, then our mind gets in the way. And so you think, now when that bird actually came and sat on the counter and stayed for 10 minutes, was that really my mom? And so we try not to let our mind get in the way. But that's my understanding, is that yes, 100%. And I'm like, whoa, that really is quite something. But you do need to do the exercises. You need to practice, and you need to engage, and you can't just, you know, sit back and say, okay, make this happen. You know, you need to really involve yourself with intention. And it works. It's really quite something.
All right. Well, that concludes our Q&A session today, which was fantastic. Thank you all so much for all those wonderful questions, and Becky for this amazing presentation today. I'm so looking forward to helping you with the course. I'll be there too, and I love this course. So thank you everyone today for showing up live.
Thank you so much, everybody. You're all so special. And you know, when you think about it, you think, oh my gosh, what would that mean to me to be able to communicate with my loved ones living beyond? It just provides a whole other dimension to our life on Earth. Ashley, you did great, absolutely great. And the questions, you know, I've been teaching this class for years, or at least components of this class for years. Those were by far the best questions we've ever had. That was excellent. So way to go. Way to go, everybody. Lots of love to you, always and forever. Always and forever. Lots of love. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye for now.